Hi guys, Jay here, back from borntoproduce.com, and here we have another little bonus video which adds on to our EDM course, and this one is all about how to create your own riff. So, if you've done the EDM course, you will notice that I just asked you to sort of paste in the MIDI blocks at certain intervals, but this obviously is great for beginners, but if those of you actually want to create your very own riff with your own keyboard, but not sure where to start with that, then this is the video for you. So the technique I'm about to show you how to find scales, notes, chords, that kind of thing. If you're not very good at music theory like myself, there's plenty of help out there, and I'm about to show you where to go and find that information very quickly. So as I said, I'm not particularly up on my music theory either, and I was able to play in the riffs via ear. You know, I don't know any musical theory, but I know what sounds right. But if you're not able to do that or want a helping hand, let's show you a couple of things that can get you started. So just before we show you the apps which help you with what scales and notes to use for your riff, let's get your MIDI keyboard plugged in. I'm assuming that most of you will probably have a MIDI keyboard. If you haven't, don't worry, I've got another little trick for you. So the best thing to do is plug in your MIDI keyboard via the USB socket, but do this before Cubase is loaded up. Okay, so if you've got Cubase loaded up, close it down, plug in your keyboard, and then load Cubase up. The reason for this is the connections go a lot smoother, and Cubase does a lot of the connections for you, whereas if you plug it in whilst Cubase is running, it tends to not recognize it, in my experience. So this is what I did. I'm just going to prove to you that my keyboard is connected. So I'm just going to go to Devices and Device Setup. Let's go to MIDI port Setup, and you'll see that my Oxygen 49 is in there on the MIDI in port. And also, obviously, if I'm using a MIDI track or an instrument track, I just need to route tell Cubase rather the input that you want to use to trigger the information. So you click on MIDI inputs and just come down to whatever your keyboard is there. You should see it in that menu. Oxygen 49 is mine. So I'm just going to select that. And now I can trigger any virtual synths that I like using my keyboard. If you don't have a MIDI keyboard, there's another alternative for you. Just come up to Devices again, and somewhere on here it is, Virtual Keyboard, so you can press Alt and K, or just select it from the menu. And here you see at the top of the screen, you've got a QWERTY keyboard, so your PC keyboard will actually play notes as well. So that's a good little tip if you haven't got a MIDI keyboard. So you want to program your own riff, but you're not sure where to start, you're not sure what scale to start in, or you're not sure what notes to use, or whatever. So there are some great little apps out there now for all platforms. So I highly recommend Monk, that's M-O-N-K, and that's a Windows 8 app. Nota, N-O-T-A, for the iPhone or Apple, and Sherlock, as in Sherlock Holmes, for the Android. Now these apps all work in the same way. They basically, if you type in, say, if you know your track is in B minor, then it will show you all the notes within that scale, and therefore you simply use any of those notes in the scale to create your riff. Alternatively, if you don't know the scale, you type in the notes that you've got so far that is currently working well, perhaps, and it will tell you the scale, and therefore you can perhaps go and find some other notes that it suggests. But this probably doesn't mean too much to you right now, so the best way is to show you practically. I'm going to hand over to John, who's already done a video on this, and the best app in our opinion is Monk, and he's going to show you how that works.
So this program, Monk, is a Windows 8 app, just like the other app that I used in the previous video, which was an iPhone app called Nota. And this one has basically, it's the same sort of premise, obviously just on a different platform. So it's like a kind of scale finder or music theory app. So Whereas in the Deep House tutorial, I'd already like come up with a riff, so I just got inspired, wrote a little riff. It's only like 4 different notes, and then I used Nota to work out what scale that it was actually written in, so I could just then use all the other notes that are in the scale to make chords or make an arpeggiated line. So for this trance riff, when I wrote it, I actually picked the scale and then just used those rules of the scale, which I shall explain in a moment, to write that riff. Okay, first of all, obviously up here in Monk, we've got our keyboard, and down here you've got different types of scale, and then the notes, or you can use these notes here, which are to select the sort of root note of that scale. So mine was just a little bit down. It was the minor natural or Aeolian scale, and it is in B. So I've clicked on B and it's moved it around. So this now is the root note. So you'll see here, if you click on scales, it shows me all of the notes that are in that particular scale. All the notes in the scale are the coloured ones. So any blank ones, or sorry, non-coloured ones, are not in the scale, so we can just kind of ignore them. So for those of you who are new to music theory, or perhaps you've only just started producing and you want to be able to program your own musical riffs, whether that be trance, funky, or whatever, or you want to elaborate on notes that you've already put down, then you're going to have to eventually start sort of looking into the music theory side of things. So this could be seen as an extraordinarily basic but very effective set of rules to go on. So it's almost like having a bit of a template. Once you know what you need, then you kind of got a bit of a musical template, so then you're free to play around with the notes within the certain sort of rule structure. So the first rule is the scale. So whatever scale you're in this case, obviously it's the minor natural, and the root note of that being B, but that could be any of the notes being used as a root note. That's fine. So this is the first set of rules, or the first rule, if you like, which is just I can only use those notes. The notes that are in that scale, those are the only notes I can use. And that's that. That's literally it. So if you do it in a major scale, then fine. Let's go up and just see what it is in the major. So in the major scale, it would be these notes instead. And then that is the first rule still. My first set of rules that I need is that scale. So those would be my notes, all the coloured ones there, and I wouldn't use any of the other notes. So obviously I'm not doing that. I'm doing it I already wrote the riff, so I know it's in minor natural. Okay, so the sort of second rule, if you like, okay, it pertains to actually making a chord. And as I'm sure most people will understand, a chord is 2 or more notes played together at the same time. So if I play B and D, they combine to make that sort of singular sound almost. And if you've got very good ears, you'll probably be able to distinguish both of there is a B and D in there. Most people can't. So the basic rule for making chords is this. I can only use the notes that are in the scale, and I can't use any notes that are next to each other, as in right next to each other. So I can't use B and C sharp to play a chord. I'll play that to you, and it sounds like this. Sounds very discordant and weird. And if I play B, C sharp, and D, sounds very sort of, just discordant and not very pleasant at all. So, but if things all change, if I play B and D, so it's B and D, suddenly it's a bit more pleasing. And then if I add the next note up, so I can't add E, because that's going to start sounding weird because the note is next to it. There you go, that's what that sounds like. So it's B, D and E, and then if I do B, D and F sharp, get a nice pleasant chord. Or I could do B, D and G, B, D and A, and you get nice chords. So as long as the notes aren't directly next to each other in the scale, then you can use whatever notes you want for a chord. And likewise, like I just showed you as well, so I can do B, E, and then A further up, even though A is next to B, but that's almost like a whole octave away. So if I'm using this B, I can use that A. So that's really the only sort of set of rules that you've got for making a chord, and that will work in any scale, just as long as you're not playing a chord with notes that are directly next to each other, you're going to be fine. So that gives you a lot of freedom. You can then, go and experiment and try different chords. That, in a nutshell, is really the most basic stuff that you need to know to actually be able to make your own riffs, to have like it's a bit of like a musical template, really. So this being the trance riff that I program, now, I mean, I could literally sort of build it all in front of you sort of thing, but there's very little point. Because once you understand what I've just explained to you, then you know exactly what I did to go about programming this in. So obviously we've got a B. I could use C sharp. That would be the next note in the scale, but I didn't. I went straight to D. So there was the gap of the C sharp. And then likewise with the next progression, so the next bar. Then we go on down to A, and I miss B, and we got C sharp there. And again, the same with the next bar after that. And then there's just these little sort of extra notes thrown in there. Obviously, these are also notes in the scale. They cannot be otherwise. It's just a case of sort of experimenting around with that and programming it in. Obviously, these are all on 16ths as well, so that's the sort of note placement. That would be the offbeat.
Right, so hopefully after watching John's demonstration of Monk, you're a bit further forward in where to start with your riff, and hopefully you've got something going by now. One top tip I would recommend to you to do is, once you've found the notes in the scale, or once the app has helped you with that, put little stickers on your keyboard keys of the ones that you can use and the ones that are in the scale. Therefore, you can't get the wrong notes. So when you're practicing doing your riff on your keyboard, all the little stickers are just going to help you. They're going to show you which keys to use and which ones not to use. So that's a really good idea. Put coloured stickers on your keys. And then just keep coming up with different loops, different riffs, different timings, until you come up with something that really works for you. It's the only way to do it. And of course, just as a finishing point, to fatten up your sound, you can do what I did in the EDM tutorial, and that's, rather than just use singular notes here, the purple ones, you can layer them up with just copy and paste the notes, maybe 3 notes below or 5 notes below, anything that just works musically. And you can start doubling up notes, and that's how you get a fatter sound. And the same for the main section. I doubled those up as well, and I had 3 different layers going all at once. 3 different layers with 2 lots of notes in each, so that's how we got such a fat sound. So guys, I hope that really helps you in producing your own riffs, and helps you a little bit with music theory, and you found out that there's some great apps out there, and they basically do the work for you. So all the very best, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers now, bye.